Hello and welcome back to the DoneDeal YouTube channel. I'm David OC and today we're joined by somewhat of an iconic car, and it is the Hyundai Ioniq 5. So this is one of the bravest cars we've seen come to the market in recent years, and for that I absolutely adore it. So it's very futuristic and naturally it is fully electric. It comes with a variety of different powertrains. You can get an all-wheel drive, rear-wheel drive, different battery sizes. And in that video we're going to be covering all that, as well as cost to buy it, charge times and all of those things. So make sure to stay tuned, and if you would like to search for new cars for sale, hit the link up there. As of right now, DoneDeal have over 3,000 2022 brand new cars for sale from our trusted dealerships around the country. Now, let's get into the review. A big part of the Ioniq 5 is obviously the design, because it is staggeringly beautiful. And we're going to be talking more about that, as well as the interior, how practical it is, what it's like to drive. But first, I'm going to have to bore you with the stats. So, big question always, what's under the bonnet of an electric car? Well, you've got a front boot. Now, depending on which version you get, the size of that changes, but it is great for putting your charging cables. And other than that, you're never really going to go under here, maybe to top up your washer fluid for your windscreen wipers, and that's about it. But let's talk about the powertrains and the battery sizes. So essentially you have three options. The entry level is a 58 kilowatt hour battery that has about 170 horsepower, 350 newton meters of torque, and it is rear wheel drive. The next version up from that is also rear wheel drive, however it has a 72.6 kilowatt hour battery. It has 217 horsepower, 350 newton meters of torque. Essentially it's a little bit more longer range, a little bit more power. And then the class topping is actually all wheel drive. So there's a motor at the front and the rear. It has over 300 horsepower, over 600 newton meters of torque. And the ranges of these are obviously going to depend on which one you get, but the entry level range is mid 300s. I think the claim number is 380 kilometers, and the top level is 480 kilometers, I think. So there's plenty of range. It also has some incredible charging capabilities, which is fantastic. But that's enough of the numbers. That's always a hard part to kind of digest and consume. But now let's talk about the design and also get into kind of the car itself. So quickly, before I talk about the boot space, look at the rear end of this. The lights here, when it lights up at night, it's just beautiful, and I think this has been one of the best looking cars. Now, to open the boot you have to go under here, which when you get dirty it might mean your hands will get a little bit dirty, and it opens up a 527 litre boot. There's a bit of storage under here for some of your charging cables, or also if you want to hide things. This charging cable is actually up here. After we film, I'm going to put that in the fruit. And then you have a nice little load cover here, which means that you can hide things. The seats fold down a 60-40 split, so it is very practical. The boot probably isn't as big as you'd expect, but that's because the batteries and the electric motor, they all live back here, so there's not infinite amount of space. But if you fold down those rear seats, there's absolutely plenty. The side profile, this thing is huge. So even if you look at when I go up close to it, it's a lot taller than it looks in real life, but what's more is it's actually really long. All the wheels are in all four corners, and the wheelbase is actually similar to something of a Range Rover Sport. So that's to put it in perspective, and when you're driving it, it does feel big and it feels really wide. But let's check out rear passenger space and then we'll hop into the front. So in here, because of that long, large wheelbase, you've loads of space. Literally, there's half a foot there from my knees. Loads of headroom. The floor is slightly elevated because on a lot of electric cars, the batteries sit along the floor, which helps keep the center of gravity nice and low. But it does mean your feet sit a bit higher up. That said, the kids will be more than happy back here. There's 2 USB points. You can spec this with a 3-pin socket there, which could be very, very handy. And it does work on household appliances. There's also an armrest here with 2 drink holders. Isofix points, really easy to get at here. Worth noting, there's only 2 of them, so if you've 3 kids, this might not be the car for you. There's not one for the front. Bit of storage in here, and overall back here is really, really nice. But the party piece is the driver's seat, so let's go check that out. So here we are on the interior, and now this is kind of where the Ioniq 5 really becomes a different car. And actually, when you're buying a car, this is where you're going to sit. So it does have to be nice. And in here, it's very futuristic, but then it still has all your kind of nice old-fashioned things like a volume knob, that often gets overlooked. Really, really like that. So let's begin with the seats. Really comfortable. They're fully adjustable, electric as well, and you can actually put them in a nap mode, so when you're charging up, it'll go the whole way back and you can kind of just chill out and regroup. Then in terms of storage, so you've got door bins here, massive storage down here. There's actually on all specs, so no matter what trim level you get, it comes with wireless charging, which is really handy. There's also more storage in here. And I know if you're thinking this is a little bit too far back, don't worry. On every spec except the basic one, that is completely adjustable. I really, really like that. And also there's a drawer here as opposed to a glove box. It's a glove drawer, which is nice and handy. Now down here there's a 12-volt socket, another USB charging point, but that also connects your phone up to Apple CarPlay. So actually if you plug that in, you'll see how quickly it does connect. Now unfortunately it's not wireless. Potentially in some of the higher specs it might be, I'm not actually sure, but it connects up really, really easily. Now I'm going to unplug that because I want to show you this system itself. The navigation on it is brilliant. It's really intuitive. I like the setup. Reminds me somewhat of a Mercedes-Benz that you get in the more modern one, which is a good thing. The whole thing's intuitive. You can do all your different settings. EV mode's a good one to check in, so you can see your range. You can see how close you are to a charger, which is really, really good. And down here you can see there's V2L. Now that is a way that you can charge not only household appliances, but you can actually lend some of the battery from this car to another car. Very sophisticated and very, very impressive. Then the steering wheel itself, well, it's really, really comfortable. No logo, which I know has been a huge talking point on the internet, but it is unusual that there's no logo there. Personally, I love that it's just 2 spokes, so when you're on a long drive, although you probably should have your hands on 10 and 2, it is nice to kind of just relax in there. And this information in front of you here, it has everything you need to know. So again, you've got your battery percentage, you've got all your different menus, so you can actually change your modes here. If you select your driving modes, it tells you, oh, I'm in sport mode, click it again, you go up into eco. You've also can change it so you can see how much miles you've done, all the usual stuff, your compass and all the likes. And it is all very familiar. So whilst it's very futuristic, your wipers are still on the right, your indicators are still on the left, which is just like any other Hyundai. So they've kind of done a good job of grasping the new and the old and making it very intuitive to any new driver. So to drive, well, first of all, I have to commend Hyundai because it has a heated steering wheel. And on a day like today, it's so good. Really recently we did a video, which I'll leave the link up there, of 10 must-have features on a new car, and one that I left out was a heated steering wheel. And after spending a couple of days in this, oh, it is essential. But aside from that, I think the first thing I notice when I'm driving it is how vast it is. It is a big car. It's got a lot of space in front of it. Visibility is great. With that said, you can see everything. It's got some big mirrors, there's a reversing camera. If you spec it into the Premium Plus, you get 360 cameras. Also, when you turn the indicator on, you actually get like a side view mirror. We had that in the Kia Sorento that we reviewed. I'll leave the link up there just so you can see what that is. That can be spec'd into this Hyundai. Now, other than that, so this particular one is the 170 horsepower version, and it actually has plenty of poke. You wouldn't really need much more power. I can understand why you might want the 217 brake, but the 300, the kind of bigger battery all-wheel drive version, probably is a little bit excessive and unnecessary. But if you've got the money, by all means do it. In terms of driving aids, well, as standard, they all come with smart cruise control, which is basically adjusting cruise control. So when the car in front of you slows down, you'll slow down. You can also then get it with blind spot monitoring and things like that if you spec it up into premium. So quickly to actually touch on that, there is 4 trim lines. The first is executive. That's quite standard, and I'd avoid it for one key reason, is that it doesn't have a heat pump, so it's not as efficient actually. But then after that there's executive plus, premium, premium plus, and it all just changes things. So things like this moving center armrest, that doesn't come on the executive, but then once you spec it up after that, it's on all of them. So they're the kind of variants that will make a difference, and in terms of spec, it's up to you. One thing I've always said, and even when I drove the Hyundai Kona, the cruise control was really, really good, but the the lane assist is phenomenal on Hyundais. That said, I find this a little bit twitchy, so it kind of has two modes. The first mode is lane departure, and what that does is it will stop you veering out of a lane. The other mode then is full-blown, essentially autonomous driving, where it will keep you in the middle of the lane. But I'll put a clip up on the motorway that I filmed with the GoPro, and you'll see how the steering wheel actually twitches a little bit. I actually drove another one of these cars and I thought maybe that was a mistake that one had, but it turns out this one has it too. So it must just be, do you know what I think it is? I think it's too clever, and I think it's constantly trying to adjust where it is. But you do start to feel it as you're driving, and could make you feel a little bit car sick on a long drive, but I actually don't use it. I just use the lane departure warning, and it's brilliant, and the adaptive cruise control is fantastic. And I think the standout thing for me is just how quiet it is in here. So you drive along, right now I'm going 100, 110 kilometers per hour, and it's blissfully silent. So overall, to drive, I think it's brilliant. Your kids are in the back, they'll be comfortable, there's ISOFIX points for them. It's very intuitive. It actually, sorry, one last thing we do have to touch on is the Regen Braking. So you'll see there's these paddles here. Now there's 3 different modes, and there's actually an auto mode, so it almost uses a little bit of its sensors ahead of it to regen a little bit faster, a little bit slower. It also matters with how warm the car is, how long you've been driving it for. It's not quite one pedal driving that you might get in, let's say, a Volvo XC40 or even a Nissan Leaf, but it will slow down when you take your foot off the accelerators. I'm not sure if you can really see that right now, but it does happen. So long-winded how's it to drive, but it's glorious. So we've come to the point in the review where we discuss some of our favourite and least favourite things, and it would be wrong for me to stand here in front of the Ioniq 5 and say this sucks, and this sucks, because it doesn't. It's really, really good, and if you buy one, you'll be very happy. One tick against it, it's maybe a little bit too big if you're using it around the city. It's a big old car. Another thing that maybe isn't ideal is that in Ireland, and this is a specific to Ireland problem, if you go for the 300 horsepower all-wheel drive version, it's going to cost you drastically more because it takes it up over 60,000 euros. And when you buy an electric car over 60,000 euros, you don't get the 5,000 euro SEAI grant, which is a little bit of a shame, and it probably means it's unlikely that we're going to get very many all-wheel drive versions in Ireland, because you do have to get it with the Premium Plus pack, which is the highest of specs. But that's all I can say that's kind of negative with the Hyundai Ioniq 5. So let's talk about some of the really positive parts. First up on our favourite features of the Ioniq 5 is that they all come with a 5-year warranty, and what's more is the batteries come with an 8-year warranty and up to 160,000 kilometers, which means these might actually get quite attractive to some taxi drivers or people who are doing a lot of mileage. Number 2 is actually right here next to me. I just really like the charging port, which brings me to number 3, and we're going to go to a charger for that. So number 3 is to do with how Hyundai have somewhat future-proofed this car, because it has incredible charging capabilities. Now, this ESP charger, it won't do it. However, with the right charger, this Ioniq 5 can charge from 10 to 80% in just 18 minutes. It can get 88 kilometers in 5 minutes. That is incredible. Now, with every electric car, I always say make sure you have a home charger, because otherwise it's not really viable using the public infrastructure. It's just not there yet. But that said, down the line when that does improve, maybe you can own one of these without having a home charger. Now, one last thing to touch on is pricing. So prices start at just under 38,000 euros. Now for that, you're getting the Executive, which is a slightly lower trim base. It's got a lot less spec, and it's also the smaller battery. Top all out with the all-wheel drive, it's 65,000 euros. I suspect the right point with maybe Executive Plus and maybe go for a bigger battery is around mid-40s to 50,000 euros. You're going to have yourself a beautiful car, which is very usable. And what's more is, and I think this is important with an electric car, it's a talking point because it's very, very unusual. What's more is I did see you can get them on a PCP deal and you're paying about €315 a month. So really, really affordable. And if you buy it that way, it's a good way to kind of get into an electric car somewhat of an affordable way. Now that's basically it. I want to say thank you so much for watching. It's quite a windy day, and I'm going to put a screen on our photo on the screen here of why we are filming up in the mountains with some amazing drone footage. I was up there in a 4-wheel drive earlier, and let's just say we would have wanted the all-wheel drive to have been up there. But nonetheless, I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have, make sure to subscribe, give it a thumbs up. And of course, if you'd like to search for new Hyundais for sale in Ireland, hit the link up there. We've got over 1,000 trusted dealerships nationwide. We'll see you in the next one.